Why do people with ADHD pivot so much? You start something new and then suddenly you are doing something completely different. I always thought that it just meant that I was being inconsistent, but it turns out there's actually a neurological reason for this. Something very interesting happening in my brain. I pivot a lot. And when I say a lot, I mean all the time. And every time I did, I thought it was either inconsistency, lack of discipline, or that I was called by the universe to do this next best thing. I would start something really passionately and then suddenly I would just move to another thing. And I would properly realize that I changed direction after I already changed direction. When I pivot, it feels so natural to me and like the right thing to do. And it's only recently, after realizing I have ADHD, did I start to understand why this happens. Or at least I have my theories. And when I looked back at my life, this pattern suddenly became very, very clear. If I look at my past projects, it almost feels chaotic. So let me give you an example of my YouTube channels and my businesses. And don't even get me started on all the hobbies that I took on over the years. At one point, I was making handmade jewelry out of resin and had a little Etsy shop. Then I started a YouTube channel about crafts, then another one about jewelry tutorials. Alongside of this channel, I made one for kids, playing with toys. I then made one on YouTube advice, then one about personal growth, one about hair tutorials, and then of course we have this channel, Ava Angels. And I would make social media for all of these. And in the meanwhile, I opened various shops and also came up with hundreds of other shops, which only stayed fictional, with their names, their email addresses, and with some of them, even their domain names paid for and never used. And all of this happened within 11 years. Before that, that's another story. There was loads going on then as well. And honestly, I am sure that I must have forgotten some of them, but we are not going to go there now. I ended up being active on only one YouTube channel, the one for crafts and jewelry making, and then this one, or at least so far. When I think about this, on my craft channel, I went from craft content to jewelry making content to laser cutting content, and then I even stopped posting on that channel and only just came back to it now with more jewelry making. And in a way, I kind of abandoned that channel because I started to build a completely new brand, Ava Angels, with a shop and a YouTube channel focused on mindset, manifestation, and spirituality. And then something interesting happened. I discovered ADHD and I pivoted again. So last summer, I found out by accident I had ADHD, and I started to read books one after another, listening to different podcasts, to different professionals, studying the science behind ADHD, and just trying to understand my own brain, how it affected me in the past and in the present. And I have to say, it honestly changed my life. That's why I have been talking about ADHD so much, because I want this same thing for somebody else. But in the process, I kind of abandoned Ava Angels shop and I jumped straight into creating ADHD content because it felt like the right thing to do. And I started to create ADHD content on this channel, Ava Angels, and on my other social media related to this channel. And so all the behind the scenes of building my small business I have already filmed, just never even got posted. I just remembered that I did post some of them, but then I deleted the 3 videos and I posted 2 spiritual videos. And then I deleted those 2 and I just started posting about ADHD. And I never even promoted my first collection, which is the heart of Ava Angels and this whole mission that started it. And believe it or not, this is just a quick example. This happens all the time in every aspect of my life. So when you think about it, when you live like this, and pretty much always have lived like this, your mind just becomes so confused and you lose your self-trust. And so before I found out I was ADHD, I would question myself why I was so impulsive and so unreliable. You know, in ADHD brain, every idea feels so important in the moment. But later you look back and think, why did I abandon that other thing that was also important to me? And I used to think that this was a personal flaw. You know, there was something wrong with me. But there is actually a neurological explanation. One of the key things about ADHD is how our brain regulates dopamine. Dopamine is the chemical in your brain connected to motivation, interest, and reward. In ADHD brain, dopamine regulation just works differently, which means that our motivation is not driven by importance or long-term goals. It's driven by interest. I always like to say that ADHD brain is an interest-based brain. So when something feels new, exciting, meaningful, our brain just has so much energy for it. We can hyperfocus, we dive headfirst, and we just can't stop thinking about this new thing. But when the novelty fades, dopamine drops. And suddenly another idea feels much more urgent and alive. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, it feels like calling from higher power. It feels like following your intuition. But dopamine and novelty aren't the only reasons why ADHD brain pivots so much. Another thing that happens is hyperfocus cycles. When we discover something new, we can go all in. We start educating ourselves on this topic. We read everything, we watch everything, we just want to know everything there is about this topic, and we can't stop thinking about it. And this usually goes for days, weeks, sometimes even months. But that level of intensity is so hard for the brain to sustain for a long time. And so it gets exhausted. It just can't keep up because it's not a machine. And so when the novelty fades, our brain starts to look for the next thing that is exciting at this sort of level so that it can replace the same sort of excitement that it was experiencing so far. Because what we kind of did was set up a high level of dopamine intake through this hyperfocus. And now when it kind of fades, the novelty, and we are dropping in dopamine, the brain is really trying to look for something so that we can keep this excitement going. Also, ADHD brains are very quick at spotting new possibilities and new opportunities. We see new ideas, patterns, opportunities, and creative directions everywhere. And just to give you an example, I have a chopstick here. I could carve this chopstick into a little carving. I could sell a hand-carved chopstick. It could be a business idea. I need to find books and videos and literature on how to carve. I need to buy tools to carve this freaking chopstick. And you know what? Now I realized how my brain works, and I am sure that I would be able to get to the stage of carving this chopstick and making a really nice carving on the end of it. Wouldn't be the best, but I'm pretty confident I would learn all there is to know about carving wood and carving little items. I would carve one chopstick, and after carving one chopstick, I would put it away, and then I would never look at carving again. So I would end up with lots of knowledge and lots of tools probably, and then the chopstick would just get lost. It's a challenge, it's exciting, it's something new, and it also offers an opportunity to run a new business. It's just crazy. And I'm just going to tell you something, I didn't even think about including this chopstick in my video. I just saw it here because I was using it for something, and this is a live example of how my brain works. I could give you a business idea for anything and everything. It is amazing how ADHD brain works, but there are cons and there are pros. And unfortunately, in this society and with these expectations that we have from this society and from people around us, it is kind of hard to live a normal life with ADHD, especially undiagnosed ADHD. Anyways, let's go back to what I was saying. So you know that feeling when you don't have anything exciting to do? Boredom. People with ADHD experience boredom much more intensely. So when something becomes repetitive or routine, the brain automatically starts searching for something more stimulating and exciting. So a lot of the time, pivoting isn't really about being unreliable. It's more like the brain is scanning the world for the next thing that feels more stimulating and exciting and meaningful and just more engaging. The problem is when you don't understand why all of this is happening, it just feels like you keep changing your mind for no reason. I mean, my brain always finds a reason, an explanation which is probably even more frustrating, to be honest. And emotions play a big part in this too. When you have ADHD, emotions can feel really intense and they can influence your decisions very quickly. So sometimes pivot can happen because you get strong emotional reaction at the moment. Sometimes it's excitement. Suddenly a new idea appears and it feels so amazing. It feels so important. Like this is the thing you should really be doing. Sometimes it's curiosity. ADHD minds are usually very curious. So when something new appears, our brain naturally wants to explore it. And sometimes it's overwhelm. If a project becomes too complicated or stressful, the brain might start looking for something that feels easier and lighter. And sometimes it's frustration. When something stops working the way we imagined, we can start feeling like it wasn't the right decision, that we made a mistake and we shouldn't have gone there. And sometimes it's inspiration. A new idea can feel so meaningful that it pulls you from everything else you are doing. So when you combine all of it, the dopamine, the curiosity, emotions, it becomes a lot easier to understand why pivoting happens so often. So we pivot, not because we lack discipline or we suddenly decide that we just don't want to do it out of laziness, but because our brain is constantly searching for meaning and stimulation. There, I said it. So at the beginning, I mentioned what I thought about my pivoting before finding out I was ADHD. But after I found out I was ADHD, it was more like, should I stick to this thing? How do I know it's the right thing to do? Should I follow my curiosity? Should I follow my heart? Actually, is it my heart or is it just the lack of chemicals in my brain? Should I be more logical and less emotional? How can I even make another decision I can trust? I have to say I really struggled because I didn't know if I could trust myself again. And so you can know all these explanations and theories and yet you still feel like you lack self-trust. Nowadays, I'm trying to see everything, including my past decisions, in a more positive light. I'm trying to see it as a pattern of curiosity and exploration. And I also believe that everything happens for a reason. In every aspect of our life, all decisions we make, everything happens for a reason. And I'm just more mindful and careful how I approach new ideas and like the new urges to pivot. And I've been thinking about it a lot and I have realized that some of these things that I pivoted from were actually meaningful to me. And so I decided to come back to them. And people can think whatever they want, but this is my life, my decisions, and I am the only person responsible for my decisions. So I can pivot as much as I want. So right now I'm trying something slightly different. Instead of abandoning one thing for another, which is what I have been doing, I'm trying to let different parts of my mind coexist. ADHD, creativity, my shop, my message. So instead of pivoting away from everything, maybe I can build something that includes all of it. And honestly, I'm still figuring it out. I still question whether what I'm doing is the right thing. I still tend to overthink everything. I still question myself and my decisions pretty much daily, especially when nothing is really happening. But at least now I understand why my brain works this way and I'm trying to work alongside of it. You know, I think it's hard when ADHD content creators struggle like this. I'm now speaking from my own experience, okay? It's like so many people around the world view us as inconsistent and flaky. Anything you have built over the years and the trust you had from your viewers and brands that you worked with can keep suddenly crashing down because people may like you and what you do. But if they get invested in your content and you constantly keep pivoting or not even showing up, it's hard to trust that person. It just feels like the creator keeps breaking their trust. And I understand this. I have been pretty much breaking my trust all my life. And that's a video for another day. But seriously, I do want to talk about it more because I find this is really important. So, if you have ADHD and you feel like you are constantly pivoting, just like me, don't forget, it just means your mind is curious. And perhaps you might need to find different structure and build different systems. Or you can simply go for it and explore whatever and whenever your brain wants to explore, as long as you have an understanding why it is. But it's all good. There are no rules. And the real challenge for me is finding something that will hold that curiosity without constantly pivoting to something else and starting from zero. I know it will take time and probably a lot of mental energy, but I'm ready. Bring it on! So I really hope you enjoyed watching this video and you found some of the information I shared helpful. And if you did, then please give it a like and let me know in the comments what you think and what you struggle with and if you pivot. And I will see you in my next one. Bye bye!